It's 7:01, so let's call the meeting to order and we'll start. And I'll start by saying good evening. Welcome to the April meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm John Schoenhorn, the chair. I'm going to ask Garrett if you would read the roll call, please.
Certainly. Commissioner Subramanian indicated she would be not at this meeting. Commissioner De Santoro,
Here.
Mr. Master Batista,
Here.
Commissioner Grady Benson is on as an attendee, but she'll be
Oh, sorry.
sorry, but she'll be herself from this application as Commissioner Master Batista sat in her spot.
And I'll further note that Commissioner Grady Benson's as the chair of the Farmington Land Trust is a bordering property owner and therefore, or administrator, so therefore in her, she made the decision that she should disqualify herself in any event from this matter. So we'll just note that for the record, she is present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, Commissioner Walsh,
Here.
Commissioner Cloud,
Here.
Commissioner Callahan,
Here.
Commissioner Gipsky,
Here.
and Chairman Schoenhorn.
Here.
All right.
All right, so the last time we were here, we adjourned with the agreement of the petitioner in the matter at 161 Talcott Notch Road so that additional materials could be submitted. I want to just thank the petitioner. I've gone through, I assume everyone has gone through, it's like 105 pages this time. So it was a lot more than we received the last time. And I hope everyone had a chance to go through all of that. And I'll just note that the reason that we adjourned, it was one of the commissioners felt that they needed additional information. And just for the record, I brought Connecticut General Statute Section 8-6. I'm going to read just a portion of that so you understand what our issue is. This is our mandate according to law. So the Zoning Board of Appeals has the following powers and duties, and I'll skip down to subsection 3. It says to determine and vary the application of the zoning bylaws, ordinances or regulations in harmony with their general purpose and intent and with due consideration for conserving the public health, safety, convenience, welfare, and property values solely with respect to a parcel of land where, owing to conditions especially affecting such parcel, but not affecting generally the district in which it is situated, a literal enforcement of such bylaws, ordinances, or regulations would result in exceptional difficulty or unusual hardship so that substantial justice will be done and the public safety and welfare secured, and then provided certain things. So that was the concern that was expressed. We understand it's better to have solar, but this is our mandate. So we asked what was the hardship? Why would the conditions of your property, and you started to get into it, but you asked for additional time to submit materials. So with that in mind, I think it was Commissioner Master Batista last time who asked the question, wanted you to explain why, let's say, a roof mounted system would not be appropriate or would cause a hardship in this case. So you submitted a fair amount of material. So I'm going to ask whoever's going to speak on it to come forward and address that, please.
Thank you.
And I'll note for the record that Commissioner Master Batista had already been appointed previously for this public hearing, so he will continue acting on behalf of and in place of Commissioner Grady Benson.
Yep.
Are these different than the materials that were submitted?
No, it's the
electronically?
exact same material. It's just, yeah, I couldn't print up everything. I ran out of ink.
Got it. And just, many of us have gone through the materials that were submitted. We were
Oh, okay.
submitted, they were given them by
Okay.
staff.
Yeah, I wasn't too
Review.
sure what the process
Sure.
would be on the town.
Sure. So Could you again state your name and,
Uh,
and address for the record?
Yep, Thomas Kenny, 967 Asylum Avenue, 2H, Hartford, Connecticut, and I work at EcoSmart. EcoSmart Home Services, I should say. Yeah. I had submitted a bunch of documentation. It's kind of hard to get our operations team to be, present in the office, but when I did, I was able to get a note. And Garrett, if you can pull up the note there, or even then just to add it like ceiling photos.
Hold on, it's a ways down.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of ways away.
There we go.
Yep. So our install crew lead, Jose, he's been in solar for quite a while. He's very technical. I wish I could have him here present. But basically, with the style of the house and the timber frame style home, he thought the rooftop option would not be feasible. And just I think I attached some documentation on the type of equipment that would be it should be towards the bottom there. So you have like your flush mounts. Oh, there you go. I think you pass a couple of them.
Jumped on me.
Yep. Right there. So that's an engineering document from one of the manufacturers that we use. It's manufactured by Iron Ridge. This is a typical flush mounted system that we use. So you can see along with that flush mount that, in order for us to even remotely get everything installed, we would have to mount everything on the rafters and drill through. And that alone will cause a lot of damage in the long haul if there is any leaks. It just cause a lot of structural integrity damage as well if there are any leaks. Granted, there hasn't been a lot of like leakage per se if the install is done correctly, but that could be, one of the issues there. Structural integrity done to the home. And I think there's another document in there.
There, this one.
Yeah, so you can see the way that the flush mounts places slid under a shingle and mounted, and we would have to put that onto the rafters, and that alone could be, an area where water could seep in and cause damage to the house and also the roof structure.
Let me ask a question on
Yeah.
that. So there are a large number of pictures that show the interior rafter. It's an exposed rafters roof. I don't know if it's post and beam, but you see the wood, the ceiling. It's a cathedral
Yeah, it's
ceiling and
cathedral ceilings. Yeah.
whatnot. So here's my question. How is the fact that if you install it on the roof and there's the potential of leakage through the O-rings or whatever you use, mounting devices, different than any other roof mounted system, so that, as I indicated, this is something that's especially different or a specific difficulty or unusual in this home?
Can you rephrase it repeat
Sure.
this?
Our statute, which I just read, talks about that the conditions have to be specific to this parcel, and usually talks about the land, but I'll include the home.
Mhm.
Let's say we're looking at it broadly. You're saying that roof mounted systems can leak. That's not true of any roof mounted system, solar
Well, I mean,
panel system?
just about every roof mounted system can leak.
So why is this one different? Why it's worse or more of a problem
Well,
in this home?
Yeah, I think just because of the cathedral style ceilings there.
It's open then into the living area.
Right. It's open and exposed to the living areas throughout the house, and we don't even know basically it's just open and exposed, so like any leakage would come into the house and cause more damage. Yeah.
All right, and where would the conduits have to go? I think your
You would have to
the
run.
homeowner indicated there would be a problem with running them inside. Would you explain that?
Right. So you would have conduits running through the home, and it would be very much exposed. conduit pipes just going through the house in order to get to the main panel.
Like exposed within the
And into
home
the
as opposed,
structure, yeah.
or they'd have to run down the outside of the house like a bunch of downspouts, but all over the place.
Yeah, pretty much all over, like, you know, alongside of the, because everything, the solar panels are strung together through microinverters, which is what we designed with the system. So you would have to run conduit from that down and into the main panel, and then with the meter outside of the home.
And where was the meter going to be in this, on this
I
array?
don't recall. Actually, it's on the right side of the driveway. So like when you pull into the a very long driveway, the meter is on the right side of the house. So it's in the front of the house.
Where were the inverters going to be located?
Right under, like if it's a rooftop option, it would be placed under the rail, like on the backside of the panel. It's kind of like if you had a string system, would be like a standalone isolated inverter. You would have power optimizers, but with this, it's a full microinverter that's on the backside of the panel.
Behind each of the panels?
Yes, individual panels. Yep. I believe this system was for 35 panels. So you would have 35 microinverters.
All right, so we'll just go through the commission members here. So Commissioner Master Batista?
Yeah, just so I'm clear. So I'm looking at these pictures that you have up there. So I've never seen one of these installations before. So you're telling me, I'm just looking at this stuff right here. That there would be conduit or cabling running along these beams?
Yeah, and for the rooftop option, it would be a max fit. We call it in our industry a max fit. You would need panels on every single roof facet. So you would have to run multiple, you
So
know.
how many cables would you anticipate you would have for each panel? So on each beam here, whatever it is on center, there's going to be a, for better terms, conduit?
Yeah, I think if you look at the solar graph shade report on the last page, I believe it should show the not that one there. It would show the
This
full
report?
design. Yes, that one there. If you look at that image right there, you would need quite a bit of conduit there. And that's not even, you know, offsetting it's not offsetting consumption at this point.
All right, so
it's very
that's my
minimal.
main question.
Yeah, it would be a
From
lot
the
of conduit.
homeowner's perspective of that the interior of their house would look like an industrial building.
Pretty much. Yeah,
Okay, all right. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
thanks.
Mr. DeSantoro, if you have any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Commissioner Walsh?
No, I don't.
Commissioner Jemski?
No.
Commissioner Cloud?
No, I'm all set.
Commissioner Callahan?
The zoning regulations allow for the placement of a ground-mounted solar array behind the longest rear wall of the house,
Yeah.
i.e. in the backyard.
Yeah.
If a ground-mounted solar array was placed in the backyard at this property, would that require disruption of wetlands and the cutting of mature trees?
Yes, it would be, well, when I initially had mapped this out, I always double check for, you know, for wetlands, because I've come across this issue personally, when helping homeowners, or even commercial properties as well. So you would need to cut quite a bit of trees on the southern part. If you were to place it on the backside there on the south western orientation, you would need to cut trees, quite a bit of trees, in order to make ground mount feasible, and it would be quite close to the wetlands as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Right? Have you completed your presentation?
I think, give me 1 second. Let me just double check my notes here. I mean, there was a comparison table prepared by, I believe, Garrett. I think this is just to show you the shading analysis on that we provided for the rooftop.
Mr. Chairman, so just so to clarify, so a shade report was provided to staff and the commit and the board, obviously, of comparing the total solar
Resource,
thank you, resource fraction for the 7 arrays that would be required for a roof mounted system. And then comparing that to the 1 ground mounted array that's proposed as part of this application. So the red shows lower solar access and the green shows full solar access. So as you can see, due to the Tilt orientation, most of the arrays are not used throughout the year, while the ground mounted is fairly consistent throughout the whole year in terms of solar generation. Just to clarify where this information came from.
I understand.
And it's just a summarization of the 2 reports.
Okay, thank you. So is that it?
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Damkiar, you spoke last, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And so I don't know if you wanted to add anything. You did speak previously. I noticed you're here with someone who was not here last time. I don't know if there's anything you want to add. You did explain a fair bit last time, and you were given the opportunity to have some additional information which you've all received. Especially, I found the photographs of the interior of the house to be particularly significant and noteworthy for my purposes. So is there anything you want to add while you're here?
Just come up to the microphone. Yeah, sorry. Have to put you in the spotlight.
And even though I said your name, would you state your name for the record and your address?
Yes, my name is Jan Damkjær, and I'm the owner of 161 Target Notch Road. So I guess one of the things is the Kerry Callahan's question about the having the solar in the back of the property. That's the part of the, there's no part of our land, even though it's a very large parcel, that's not within the wetland area. So even if we move the panels to the backside of the house, it's still within the same, it's still within, 150 feet. And then besides that as well, the backside of the house is the most wooded area of our property, which besides trying to mount them on the house, having to cut down a lot of trees for that purpose, if we did a ground mount back there, it would have to be even more that would have to come down. The place where we have proposed the solar, the ground mount solar, is an area that is already a grassy area. It's already an open area. And because of the way that the driveway runs parallel down the property, it actually makes the sun travel from pretty early on in the morning down that driveway, and it's just completely open for receiving the sunlight. For the mounting the panels on the house, obviously you heard me last time that, putting the conduit on the outside of the house or on the inside is just not something that aesthetically is going to be very pleasing for me.
And I'm going to emphasize what I said to you last time, though. The aesthetics are not the deciding factor, right?
Okay.
Because what was trying to convey was, sometimes not doing a project is the other solution. So we have to find a hardship, not whether something is desirable aesthetically.
Yeah. And I spoke with Jose, the technician that came out. He did say a whole lot more to me than he actually wrote on his report. So I wish he had actually written up a little bit more. But I mean, he was flat out saying right away, this is not a property that I would put solar on. It's not, the way that the beams are like 5 feet apart. It really makes it very difficult to put the bracketing on the house. And I mean, and that's where he was then talking about the leaks. It's more likely that we're going to get leaks because trying to hit this, and then because it's drilling into something that's the interior of the house, you're more likely to have these issues.
Let me ask you a more pragmatic question. So I drive by Target Notch Road a lot from where I lived when I I'm not going to get on the highway. I'm going to go the back way to Route 4 towards West Hartford and Hartford. So where your house is was way down in a valley
Yeah.
on Talcott Notch Road. Even if you were to cut down all those trees and put a solar array behind the longest wall of the house, it would still be visible from Talcott Notch Road, or would it not be if you were driving towards the Yukon Health Center in that direction? Would you still see it because of how high the road is compared to where?
I don't think you would see it, but still, it's within the wetland area anyways, but it would be a I mean, we would have to cut down the trees all the way over to the neighbor that spoke last time.
Right.
So I don't think she would be happy with it. She would definitely see it.
I see. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Damkar?
Nope.
All right. In that case, thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Is there anyone else, either in person or online, that wishes to speak in favor of the application?
Do you want to talk too? Oh my God, my wife wants to talk.
All right, so would you state your,
Great
come up
speaker,
here,
by the way.
state your name for the record and your address, please?
Yes, Kimberly Heidinger, 161 Talcott Notch. And I don't want to waste your time. And I know you guys, I appreciate that you let us come back and chat again. Just in talking about the project, and I don't know if I can directly answer anybody's, particular questions. I feel like the spirit of this wetlands, the whole conservation idea and the idea of being 150 feet away from it is conservation, is protection, is environment. And this idea of cutting down trees, these are trees that are 50 years old, that are carbon stores, that have been sucking the carbon out of the climate. It just feels like the wetlands and the trees are both under the umbrella of conservation. And the idea of cutting those down, to me, it is a hardship, because how could we do that? And the amount of time that it would take for us. So we want to do solar because we want to get away from fossil fuels. And it's something that I think the town and everybody should be talking about. And I know in Connecticut, in the legislature, they do have, they are talking about conservation right now and what they want towns to do and what they want to see in the state. So I think it is important for us to do what we can. So we want to do solar for that reason, to get away from fossil fuels. And so then if we had to cut down trees as a way to get away from fossil fuels, then it defeats the purpose, because we'll never get back the carbon. So the trees and the soil are the carbon sinks. They've sucked up 50 years of carbon. The instant we cut those down, they release the carbon back into the air, and then they no longer exist to suck that carbon back in. So that, to me, is a hardship for the community and for the environment. Right now, those trees are doing a service. And when my husband said, the driveway exists, if you look at our property, and he was saying today, we should have had the meeting at our property. You all should have come to the property to see. So we have wetlands in the front and we have wetlands in the back, and everything on our property is within 150 feet of wetlands. Everything, the driveway, the house, everything is. The statute regarding the wetlands, I think, came after our house was built and our driveway. But if you look at the pictures, if you look at the map of our property, you'll see all those things are within the wetlands. And I read the Connecticut statute for the wetlands. I looked at Farmington's, and I know we have that 150 feet that we're looking for. But in Connecticut, what they really are talking about is this idea of activity in the wetlands, and they're looking for the towns to protect the wetlands, and nothing that we're going to do is going to disturb the wetlands. And I know neither of the gentlemen talked about it, but the solar panels, they're ground mounted. They don't sit on the ground. So it's already a lawn, it's grass. It's not wetlands where we're talking about going. If you look and see what exists there, it's already grass. And then beyond that, 40 feet or whatever that depending on where it is where the wetlands are. Some places, I think it's going to be 80 feet away, right? So the wetlands are there. We're not going into the wetlands, no activity into the wetlands, no soil is being removed. It's like an auger drill that just goes in and mounts these little like screw things into the ground, and then the mounts sit on top above the ground. So there's no disruption, there's no damage to the wetlands. But again, not that this was a question on the table, but in my opinion, and as the homeowner and as a community member, I really think, you know, getting away from fossil fuels is important, doing stuff for the environment, and the spirit of this wetland conservation, this act is for conservation. And so the trees and getting into renewables, that's all under that same umbrella. That's all I wanted to add.
Well, I want to respond to that
Okay.
because I think last time your husband said the same thing, but you have to understand our role. And I thought of, but from last time to this time, what the analogy would be. I don't know if you're familiar with, if you drive up Route 44, Albany Avenue up in Norfolk, there's a couple of giant windmills, you know, they're like 250 feet tall. You come around a curve and there are those giant windmills going around. They are renewables. But if you were to come in and say, I want to, because it's, you know, a renewable, we want to put a 250-foot tall, one of these giant windmills in our yard, and told us it's because you want to get away from fossil fuels, we'd still have to say, well, that's not appropriate in a residential neighborhood,
Mhm.
right? So we have, you know, there are zoning regulations
Right.
in the town. You're asking us to vary them
I get
or
it.
to
Mhm.
carve out an exception for you.
Mhm.
And the law says, well, we can do that if we find that there is a good cause, basically. There's
Right.
a hardship. So unfortunately, you know, maybe everyone should have, you know, move away from fossil fuels, but our job
Mhm.
and our sworn duty is to follow, we have to follow the statute. It
Mhm.
tells us what we can and can't do.
Right.
And maybe nobody's objecting to this, but we still have to be consistent. If we said yes to you and your next door neighbor
Yep.
came in and they didn't, and the people happen to oppose it,
Mhm.
like, you know, we can't say, well, there was more opposition last time, so we're going to vote that down. Nobody objected, so we're going to allow it this time. So you just
Right.
need to understand that's what we have to find. And that's why I think the questions that were posed last time addressed some of the materials that came.
Right.
You know, and we're going to
Yeah.
now. So I just want you to understand.
Okay, yeah, the two words that I picked up on when I was reading the statute was prudent and feasible, right? And I think, and I don't know if it was explained well enough to say, okay, it's not feasible. I didn't see the word hardship anywhere. What I saw was prudent and feasible. Is it prudent and is it feasible, or is it not feasible? And I think the feasibility, am I wrong in those
It's
words?
exceptional difficulty or unusual hardship are the words.
So, Mr. Chairman, so the statute that Kimberly
Kimberly,
is referring to is the wetland statute, which I believe is 22A. That would be for the Wetlands Commission. This is the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is, I forget the number off the top of my head, but Chairman Schoenhorn had it. It's
8-6. Yeah.
okay,
right. So that the preservation of the wetlands would apply to the Wetlands Commission.
okay,
However,
That's not us.
right.
okay. And do we have to go to them next?
Yes.
Okay.
This
So-
is the first step, then there's wetlands, then TPD. for site
Okay.
plan approval.
Okay, so my apologies for throwing those two words at you. Those were the things that I was looking at because I did look at the wetlands statute, obviously, because that seems to be the issue. I think the hardship is the fact that we can't attach these because we don't have an attic, right? So everybody else that gets solar panels, they bring those solar panels in, they get drilled into the supports, then they can go into the attic. They can see if there's leaking, if there's any issues in the installation, and then the conduits and the ducting and everything is in the attic. We don't have such a thing. So I know Jose said to my husband that our things are too wide apart. So he's concerned about the structure of the house, of attaching them to the outside. And then also by attaching them to the outside, there is nothing in between us and the outside. So when you attach them, those screws come right through into our living room, although, you know, it's very high up. So then you have leaking and issues that would come directly into the house, and there'd be no way to see those ahead of time in the attic. Makes it very difficult to service it. So, you know, I think that speaks to the hardship. Is there something that I forgot about that piece of it? And then, of course, you know, running things on the outside of the house. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry. Again, I don't want to waste your time. I just wanted to add in the pieces and parts that I thought were important. I can, anybody has. any
Thank you.
questions? Yes.
Does anyone have any questions, additional questions? All right, so we're going to now close the
Mr.
hearing.
Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I
Yeah.
just want to just note for the record, there's no one under attendees.
Oh, I thought I had already
Please.
asked that.
No, then Kimberly,
Oh,
set
that's
up,
right.
so-
She spoke before. Yeah, so
And then
nobody
obviously-
who wants to speak remotely.
right, there's no one present online, and obviously there's no one else present in the chamber. So
Got it. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing at this time and I'll entertain a motion regarding the application. Somebody like to make that motion?
Second.
Well, somebody has to make the motion.
Who made the motion?
Liz, Commissioner Gemsky, and I believe Commissioner Cloud seconded.
You can use the language.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard Chris.
I would like to make a motion to accept the application, approve the application for variance to locate ground mounted solar array and other than required yard at 161 Talcott Notch Road, R80 zone.
Is-
Continued from last.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. And at this point, it would only be the regular commissioners plus Commissioner Master Batista would speak at this time. So you made the motion. Why don't you just indicate for the record your reasons?
I think hardship was proven. It wasn't something that was proven last time, but this time around, considering that the piping has to go on the inside of the house. I think that's a hardship, as well as cutting down trees if they needed to put in rooftop solar. Those are my two reasons.
Anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, I would comment that I'm glad you guys came back, honestly, because I think the first presentation had a lack of clarity that has been cleared up today, which is much more helpful for us to make the appropriate decision moving forward. So thank you.
I agree, and just I agree, and I think with where we're heading, would concur in the outcome, I believe. But just to clear, to me, whether or not a roof mounted solar array is feasible or infeasible or aesthetically pleasing or aesthetically prohibitive, to me is totally irrelevant. The issue to me, and that's why I asked the question, the issue to me is ground mounted can go in the backyard. Why can't it go in the backyard in this case? Why is that a substantial hardship? Now we finally have an answer on the record. That is because of the wetlands and because of the trees that would have to be cut down. That, I believe, is a sufficient hardship created by the nature of the property itself, that I am now much more comfortable with the existence of undue hardship.
And Commissioner Master Batista, since you had concerns last time. do you
Yeah,
have-
I would say a lot has been cleared up. I agree with the potential getting too close to the wetlands. I thought this was very clear now. And more so about if you had to put them back there, the amount of trees you would have to take down. It would just be counterproductive of what you just explained. So I feel that this is the right way to go by putting them where you initially wanted them. And I agree with the inside, even though I kind of agree with Commissioner Callahan that, you know, the aesthetics, but to start drilling holes in your roof, that could be pretty damaging in the long run. That's it.
You want to add anything?
No, I agree with what's been said. I think this is a more clarifying presentation than the last time.
Yeah, and I'm going to say I thank you for coming back and giving us this additional information. Although I'll just say that I don't necessarily agree with what Commissioner Callahan said, that whether it could go on the roof or not is irrelevant. I think it is relevant for two reasons. One is I think I said last time, I happen to be in favor of solar. I have rooftop solar at my house that's I've had for now 5-6 years. But I have an attic and it's an unfinished third floor attic area that could also have been an extended third floor of the home, but there's plenty of room. I see where the conduits are up there and there's plenty of room for them and they're not exposed to the living area. Sometimes when we're making these decisions, I also think because of the location of your property, this is not going to change the character of the neighborhood. you have an unusual piece of property. There's no next door neighbor per se. And it's down in the dell, like in a valley. So it doesn't in any way alter the neighborhood in any detrimental way. And I do think that one of the considerations is whether or not, if you're going to put in solar rooftop, would have been an alternative that wouldn't require variance. So I did take that into consideration. And I agree based on especially the photographs and some of the other material I've read, even about the weight and how many panels there'd have to be on, it was rooftop, and how little it would offer in terms of, because of the shade, that would be a reason I would add as a basis for finding a hardship. So I'm going to also be in favor. So we've all spoken. I'm going to ask Garrett if you would call the roll, please.
Certainly. Commissioner Gemske,
Yes.
Commissioner Cloud,
Yes.
Commissioner Master Batista,
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Callahan,
Yes.
and Chairman Schoenhorn.
Yes.
All right, the 6 votes in favor, so the motion passes.
All right. So the next step, I guess, is for you. Now you've been authorized to put the panels where you want on a ground mounted array. So now you have to go to inland wetlands to get their approval. And I'll just note, you've got to give them more specific information about the wetlands and talk about that with them. That's my advice to you. All right. So moving on, the only other item on the agenda is the minutes. So I'll entertain a motion about that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Minutes have been approved. Before we adjourn, I'm just going to ask, is there anything in the pipeline for next month's meeting at this point?
Not that I'm aware of, but full transparency, I was out last week, so not that I'm not aware of anyone. Doesn't mean nothing's gonna come out of nowhere in the next week. I think our deadline's still 2 weeks away.
What's the deadline? Do you
I
know?
think it's the 29th,
29th. Okay.
so we still have 2 weeks. If anything comes up, I'll let.
All right. Well, maybe we'll see everybody next month. Maybe we won't. So I'll move on to the last item on the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.